Several approved spot Bitcoin ETFs began trading this morning after the SEC greenlit 11 of them, including BlackRock, Invesco, and our next guest, WisdomTree, under the ticker BTCW. Now, the landmark approval paves the way for investors to gain exposure to Bitcoin as a way to diversify their portfolio. Let's bring in Christopher Gannatti, WisdomTree Global Head of Research, to discuss this more. Thank you for joining me this morning. And of course, a long time coming, waiting for these spot Bitcoin ETFs. I want to first get your reaction, given that this was something that was 10 years in the making, now that it's finally here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us today. At WisdomTree, we've been working towards this and managing globally cryptocurrency and Bitcoin assets going all the way back to 2019. So we've been very active within the space, been seeking to innovate. We watched a couple of years ago the futures-based strategy and recognized that there's just a difficulty in generating the exposure that way. So to be able to offer to clients the spot price exposure, which is what happened in these couple of days here, it's extremely exciting because it is a better structure, and really that's what we're focused on here at WisdomTree.
So, Christopher, obviously you had a wave of them approved all at once. How does WisdomTree differentiate itself from the rest that have all launched at the same time?
That is the quintessential question. And so the fact that we have a large team, we're focused on this for years leading up to this moment, that is certainly a factor. It's going to lead to better research materials, ability to bring more value to certain clients and relationships. But you're absolutely right to note, at the end of the day, everyone is providing exposure. It's the same underlying spot-oriented Bitcoin ETFs. Many of the providers also waiving the fees to zero, at least initially, for various points of time and amounts. So it's going to be among the most competitive dynamics that we believe we have seen at WisdomTree in the ETF industry.
And this is something that you have already seen in Europe with your Bitcoin ETPs over there. Talk about how that compares to the market that you see in the US.
So it's fascinating to think about the fact that different regimes, different places around the world, regulatorily speaking, have had a different timeline to allow the use cases and ultimately exposures to spot digital assets. At the end of the day, when you look at the European study, a lot of those regulators and exchanges were earlier on the timeline, so a bit ahead of the game. It's fascinating to consider that in ETFs broadly, the US is ahead of and larger than Europe and basically every other asset class, with obviously the exception now of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So Europe has had basically a 4-year head start, but we're already seeing massive trading volumes today within this ecosystem that has been created with these 11 different strategies. So we'll see at the end of the day. I think in a couple of days with the futures-based strategy, there was more than $1 billion in AUM a couple of years back. And so at the end of the day, we'll have to see how these couple of trading days compare to that and where we are compared to European AUM within the first couple of weeks.
So I'll be curious to see some of the inflows. Obviously, you have a lot of institutional investors at the head of this, retail investors who, when you think of how Bitcoin started, and now you see some of these huge asset managers really taking the lead here to get this spot Bitcoin ETF through. What does that mean then in terms of Bitcoin's movements here going forward?
So we view positively at WisdomTree anything that gets more participants into the Bitcoin ecosystem as price positive, because essentially you think of the fact that there's a very, very defined, algorithmically driven supply of Bitcoin. And we have the halving event. The halving events, they happen every 4 years, roughly speaking. They're expected to happen in a couple of months here, where the block reward for the miners goes down by a half again. It'll be the 4th such event. And historically, that means there's less Bitcoin supply coming into the market. You have a potential source of demand here from a different range of investors. So you combine these elements together, and it's possible, like other commodities and currencies, if the supply is outpaced by the demand, you can have a very positive price dynamic. And that's what we ultimately expect. We just don't know the time frame, in the sense that was there some anticipation of this approval baked in? Do you see a little buy the rumor, sell the news for a couple of days here? We'll have to see how the short term essentially gets moderated into the medium and long term, which we think can be quite positive.
And I did think it was interesting that SEC Chief Gary Gensler was the one who gave that deciding vote to press ahead with these spot Bitcoin ETFs. But then as people are looking ahead as to what's next, what could be the next crypto asset to perhaps get this sort of treatment, what would you tell them? Because as you look at Ethereum and Ether, it's a very different ballgame when it comes to Bitcoin. Do you have any plans then going forward to perhaps include other crypto assets?
So at WisdomTree, we're certainly looking across the board. We have our WisdomTree Prime ecosystem, which is meant to really tokenize a whole suite of financial assets and allow direct spendability to the user, such that if people want to hold their money in different investable assets, be it treasuries, gold, Bitcoin, what have you, and directly go out and buy a coffee based on those underlyings, that's something we're bringing to the market. So we're extremely focused on the entire digital assets ecosystem and tokenized finance. And we are aiming to be first or close to first in any of those next developments as they occur.
Well, congratulations, of course, to this new development here. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. Christopher Gannatti, WisdomTree Global Head of Research. Thank you so much.
Thank you.